Chuck Stockard, 66 years old, 30 years, and I was a FEO, or now they call it an engineer. I am from Greensboro, went to Page High School, and never left Greensboro, been my whole life. I was related to Butch Hagler, and he was also my training officer, or actually one of my training officers. What was I doing in my life before the fire department? I was working jobs that really had no future. So I started trying to find a job that I could work and have a future in. The process to get hired was, of course, the background check and interviews, and I wasn't hired my first time. It took like 3 years to get hired, so I had to work at it. Actually, I started working, a friend of mine, Gary Wilson, was working at Battleground Fire Department, and I actually got hired there and worked there for a few years, and then started trying to get on with Greensboro, and of course, eventually I did. My starting salary, I had to talk to David Birch about that, and it's around $800 a month. My training class, David Birch, Richard Slowbaum, Kathy Smith, Terry Hahn, Bobby Nugent, Doris Wall, Anita Strong. I could probably name them all, but there was 20 in my class. So one good story was a funny story, I think. We had, I got hired May 1st, 1979. It was summer months in our training, and we all brought watermelons in to work and put them in the refrigerator in the morning, and by the hot afternoon, we all enjoyed our watermelons. And of course, we played football or whatever we could do during our lunch break, and but it was all good. Special moment or a special time being a firefighter, it was just something I enjoyed. I wanted to do it. Training was something I'd never done anything like that before, and I learned a lot. My first station assignment was Old Station 5 on Friendly, 1618 West Friendly Avenue, and my first company assignment was Engine 5. My first captain was George Tucker, and he was a good one. I learned a lot from him. Some of the other firefighters that were stationed there was Larry Coble, Wayne Weatherman, Randy Penix, Charlie Reed. I think Roger Collis was there at that time, and some other on the other shifts. You know, I picked up a few nicknames. Some I can't talk about, and but Stockyard was one, and Rick Merle. He called me Mr. Peterman, Mr. Peterman. So that was funny to him, and it is kind of funny. He was on Seinfeld, Mr. Peterman. So Rick Merle liked that a lot. So pranks at the firehouse, absolutely. Everybody was involved in pranks. Back then, it was no big deal. Nobody got offended, and it was just playing, really. And so I remember Steve Ross at Station 11. We ran paper clips across the ceiling and put a spider on the end of a fishing line, and one of us had the other end of the fishing line in our bed, and we all got in bed got our eyes adjusted to the dark and let that spider come right down in his face, and we could see him, and we were laughing, and he was swatting at it. He didn't know what it was, so that was probably one of the funniest times, funniest pranks. Yeah, we all cooked, we all ate together, and that was how we became close. It was like a family. I mean, we sat at the table, the long kitchen tables, and talked, and we had a TV. We had Andy Griffith on at 5 o'clock, so we made sure we ate at 5 o'clock every day. And if you went over cooking, you got in trouble. So I did have some meals, and I don't know that I was a good cook, but one of my meals was a roast that actually stole that from Preston Blaylock, and I used that a lot. And of course, spaghetti and easy meals like that, which, you know, some people got into a lot more difficult meals than that, but I didn't. And the cubicles I've worked at stations that had both, and I mean, I liked them both. The dorm, when we had people that snored, like at Station 11, we had Frank Fortune he snored so bad, he would wake you up and snoring, and then you couldn't get back to sleep, and then people would start throwing toilet paper and hitting blinds, and we had a pool table, so they would throw pool balls, and it was kind of wild to sleep in that atmosphere. The cubicle, it was more private, but you know, you had your own TV in there. So the dorm, you had one TV, so you would have to watch what everybody else wanted to watch, and the cubicle, you could watch whatever you wanted to watch. So it was a little more personable, I guess you would say. Families visiting the fire station. When I first got on, that was like a Sunday thing. A lot of family members would come on Sunday, and nowadays I'm not sure how that works. I don't know if they do that. I've heard that the younger people don't associate I don't think as much as we used to, but we all, like you said, we hung out on our days off, and you know, I remember, I think it was Station 8 I was at, and somebody needed a new roof, and the next day we got off and everybody went over to their house, and we put a new roof on their house, so it was good. Not necessarily my first call, but I was on Engine 5, and we had a call on Market Street, house fire, and it was in the basement, and we went in the kitchen, and everybody left me. This was my first fire. Everybody left, and so we had been taught in training to follow the hose line or follow the wall, and so this was like a tight area, and the hose line was coiled up, so I was just going around in circles on that hose line, and I wasn't finding my way out. And then so I decided to switch off the hose line and get on the wall, and everywhere I went was kitchen cabinets, and everywhere I was going up and down the wall. And then I finally found the door, and that was down to the fire, and so it was too hot to go anywhere. It was too hot, so my alarm went off, and so I kind of panicked, and I started kind of yelling for help. And Jimmy Williams was at Station 9, and he came in. I saw this big hand coming towards me. I was glad to see it, but so I got he held my hand and got me out of the house. The value in medical calls, I think fire stations were a whole lot closer than where the EMS bases were. So we were on scene probably within 3 minutes most of the time. So we got to give basic life support right away. Multi-alarm calls, A1 Rentals on Elm Street was one of the bigger calls that I was on. I think we were first alarm, and I don't remember how many alarms it went to, but we had a lot of fire, and we were there all day, and then when we got released, we got called back that night. They used to have fire watch a lot, so we got called back for fire watch. So it was definitely a long day. And medical calls that would bother me involve children, so I mean, you could go and one call, a guy handed me a baby, a lifeless baby, and so we immediately put him in the unit. It was kind of a load and go type thing, and so when we got to the hospital, we were backing the unit in, and the mother was in the emergency room, and so I took the baby and I was doing CPR and rescue breathing on the baby and walked right past the mom. So anything involving young children bothered me the most. January 5th, 2018, I was at home and started having chest pains, and severe chest pains. And so I told my wife, I said, we need to go to the hospital now. And I think being a firefighter probably saved my life. I drove myself to the emergency room. My wife wanted to drive, and I said, no, I'm driving, because I knew how fast I think I needed to get there. I knew which way I wanted to go. And so we got there, and I had just gotten back into the treatment room and just had gotten up on the table and coded. And so they started CPR on me. The ER doc started CPR on me, and then they shocked me a couple of times, and I came back, and I guess that's it. I'm back. So absolutely. Well, that day, everybody was telling me how lucky I was and wanting to know if I needed anything, if my chest hurt, and they kept saying, do you realize how lucky you are? And I didn't know at that point what had happened. So my wife was there with me, and so when it was a little quiet, they had to get me up to the cath lab and all that stuff. And so after I was out of the cath lab, I asked my wife, I said, why are they asking me if I need something for my pain in my chest, and why are they telling me I'm so lucky? She said, well, you died. So hard to believe. Well, I know when I was still working, a retired firefighter would come by, and we would sit down and talk to them, and they could tell us stories, and that would probably help us, on fires and stuff. But I don't really go by many fire stations now. I do still go to the fire training center, to the gym, and I see some recruits, and I see some firefighters come in for EMT, and I do get to talk to them a little bit, but mostly it's the people I still know. The young guys, they don't talk much. I don't know that I don't know why, but it's just different. And I hear that from the older guys too, that the young guys kind of stay off to themselves, and they're on their cell phones a lot, and they play video games a lot, and that's kind of the way it is now. But it didn't used to be like that. Well, Davie Street was probably one of the biggest fires. And actually, I was down at Station 11, and we were called in, but we never went down there the whole night. We had everybody showed up from our shift, and no truck. All the trucks were gone, so we just kind of hung out at the station. And then the next morning, we went down there and relieved the engine company. And I wasn't assigned to the engine. I was on Squad 3 and Truck 1. And so they were, who wants to drive the engine? I said, I'll drive it. So I was not familiar with it. So Junior Allen was the captain. He said, you want to put it in pump gear and kind of get familiar? I said, yeah. So we pulled the truck out and put it in pump gear, and 5 minutes later we went on a house fire, a working house fire. And 2 people burned up in the house. It went well. I mean, got there, got the hose charged, everything went well. They called the hydrant, and then people were coming up to me and asking me where stuff was on the truck. Well, I didn't know. I was not familiar with that truck. So I told them, I said, you'll have to find it yourself. I was busy at the pump panel. I think it's good for people to come in and talk about their experiences, and other people can learn from what we're talking about here. The value I see in these interviews is people can come in and tell you about their experiences, 30 years with the fire department, and people that watch them can learn from them. It's good for their families to see it. So I think it's a good thing. People that were mentors, I think Cliff Oakley was a good mentor. I mean, he helped me a lot when I got on, and I had a lot of good officers. Randy Parrish, later on Brandon Weaver. I mean, there were so many. George Tucker was my first captain. He was a good officer, good fireground officers, and good to be around them at the fire station. Everybody I worked with, I seemed to get along with them. Don't really remember any challenges. I mean, of course, I'm sure there was, but right offhand, I don't remember any. Would I do it all over again, and would I change anything? Absolutely, I would do it again. Changing things, I had such a good time at what I was doing. Like I said, I was on the squad for a while. I was on the hazmat team for a while. So I don't really think I would have changed anything. I mean, I could have tried to be a captain or something like that, but I just had a good time at what I was doing. I don't recall a heartbreaking moment, but just like I said before, the calls with children bothered me the most. I think it was probably the proudest moment was when I got promoted. I got promoted to engineer, and it took a lot. That was a very challenging promotion. Well, death and victims and how we coped, we just had to deal with it back then. We didn't have anybody counseling us or anything, so basically you just went back to the station and carried on. I mean, you just would just carry on at the station. That's all we could do. I did. I worked with them. Female firefighters, I did work with female firefighters, and they fit right in with what we did. Terry Wallace was one that I remember, and she was good. She was very smart, and so I think we worked well together. The roles of firefighters, I'm sure it has. You know, today it's probably a lot more technical than it was back then. I mean, back then, you know, we did run a lot of medical calls, but the basic thing was you put the wet stuff on the red stuff. So, I mean, it was basic. So, I did not. My brother was killed. I did not serve in the armed forces. My brother was killed in Vietnam, so my mom wouldn't have allowed that. So, no, I did not. You know, a successful firefighter is somebody that does their job and gets along with people and, you know, works well with others at the station. You know, if they want to get promoted, that doesn't, to me, mean you're successful. So there's a lot of things that kind of play into that to me. Well, my family stuck with me, and you know, there was being family, being away for the holidays and nights and weekends, and you know, you would just celebrate Christmas on another day. If you had to work Christmas, you would do it Christmas Eve. When you got up to go to work, you would have Christmas that day, and then you would go to work. But you know, it was a lot of sacrifice. Affecting my health, being a firefighter affected my health. I think it has affected my health, but like I said before, talking about my heart attack, I think being a firefighter saved my life. What advice would I give a rookie coming on nowadays? That's hard. It's a hard question. It really is. I think I would have to tell them that, you know, when you get out to the station, you need to do what you're told. You need to get up with the senior firefighter and learn from them, and because it could save your life one day. What would I think the like for the fire department to remember about me? Just that I think I got along with everybody. I liked everybody, and as far as I know, people like me. So that's the main thing for me. Yeah. What I miss most about the fire department is being with the guys, being at the station and having fun. I mean, we played basketball, we played cards, we trained hard, we played hard, and you know, I don't know of another job that you could do what we did. To hear them talk about it, the firefighters having a downtime, it's not like it used to be. I mean, we had holiday routine around Thanksgiving, Christmas. They don't have that anymore. And training I mean, we trained at the station mostly on Saturdays, and of course we didn't train at all on Sundays, but they're at the training center a lot. I mean, EMT is changed so much now than it used to be. I love you. And you were one of my training officers way back in 1979. We had several. You, Teeters, Cliff was there, Carl Eller was there. So, I mean, we had some good officers then. So
That was a long time ago.
that was a long time ago, 40 plus years ago.